Welcome to the Private Practice Pro podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping therapists cultivate success. Here's your host, Kelley Stevens.
This podcast is sponsored by Simple Practice. I've been using Simple Practice since 2016, which has helped me run a smooth and profitable private practice over the years. It has simplified everything from scheduling to billing, giving me a better balance between the work I'm so passionate about and the family time I'm not willing to miss out on. Check out the episode notes to get a free 2-month trial of Simple Practice, my preferred all-in-one HIPAA-compliant solution. All right, so welcome back, everyone, to the Private Practice Pro podcast. I'm so excited to have my guest here. And Patrick, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. So tell us, first of all, where you're sitting, where you are in the world, and what you do.
Thanks, Kelley. My name is Patrick Casal. I'm the founder and owner of All Things Private Practice, the host of the All Things Private Practice podcast, and the moderator of the All Things Private Practice Facebook group. I am in Asheville, North Carolina, in my work from home office that I seem to never leave. And I host entrepreneurial retreats for therapists all throughout the world. I had a coaching program for therapists taking the leap. I moderate the All Things Private Practice Facebook group and then have the All Things Private Practice podcast, group practice owner here in Asheville as well. So we have a group practice of about 15 therapists, 2 psychiatric providers, and an office manager, specializing in the neurodivergent, LGBTQIA, and BIPOC communities.
You're busy, dude.
Someone messaged me last night and was like, hey, I'm in your Facebook group. You answer everything. Is it you or is it someone else? And if it's you, the hell are you doing this? And I was like, I hate this question because I don't know how to answer because I feel shame now.
Right. So wait, so is it you? Are you the one doing it or is it someone else?
It is me. I really struggle with being responsive to things. And I think that is a challenge area and an area of growth for 2023.
Do you mean you want to respond to it? Like you have to respond right away or you don't respond?
I do. So like I have a really hard time with like type A personality. Everything has to be clear, can't have notifications. And I was saying this to my co-host of my other podcast yesterday because she's like, I don't know why you keep responding to all these comments and messages, but I just feel grateful to have an audience. So yeah, I feel obligated, but I'm going to do better.
Do you respond to questions that are not within your community, like within your Facebook group, like just random, anyone who sends you a question on Instagram or something?
I want to say,
oh my God, that's a yes. That pause is a yes.
I want to say no. I've done better. Like I don't respond to trolling anymore because it's just not worth our time.
Did you used to respond to trolling?
Yeah, I get like real frustrated and like, defensive. And I'm like, this is not worth my time. But, I had this like TikTok video go viral and it hit like 1 million views and had all these comments. And I found myself going down this rabbit hole of responding to everything for a week. I had to delete the app because I was like, I can't do this. This is going to consume me. So I had to get rid of it. Otherwise, it would have continued. So work in progress this year for that.
Do you do it on your phone or do you do it on your computer?
It's really whatever device I'm on at the time.
Right.
I think I've gotten better post throat surgery, like because I was doing, like I told you, individual and group coaching for therapists who were starting their practices and growing their practices. And that it definitely helped. Like having a major medical procedure definitely allowed me to be like, hey, I can't do this and this is why, and not feel any guilt. So, that was a one bonus of a really negative experience.
Well, you want me to give you my tip? I have a hack for this.
Sure.
All right, then we're going to get on our topic. But maybe someone listening to this struggles with the same thing. So I had the same problem. I used to feel like I had to respond to every single message. But the problem is like I don't know about you, but like I get a lot of messages that, I could spend an hour or two a day on this and I'm not getting paid for that. So I started taking listener questions at the end of each episode And so when somebody DMs me with a personal question, I send them a response back that's like, this is such a great question. Here's my phone number. Call in and ask this question. So I don't know.
like that.
Yeah.
That's
So
a
then
good
they
method.
get like an actual genuine answer, and then other people benefit from the answer. Or I tell
That
them to
just
like
creates
join my
more
Facebook
engagement for
group.
you too, which is great.
Yeah, that's true. It's like it's a win-win. Okay, Patrick. So one of the many reasons I wanted to have you on, other than I just love talking shop with you, is I wanted to talk and pick your brain about retreats. So this is a topic I've actually never talked about on my podcast. We haven't had a single guest talk about. However, I get tons of questions from therapists who want to host their own retreats, but kind of have like no idea where to start. So first, can you just tell us like tell us about the retreats you offer? Like, what are you currently doing in your ecosystem?
Yeah. So I started All Things Private Practice during COVID. And before that happened, my goal was actually to start a completely different business, to start a travel coaching business where I would help helpers step away, immerse themselves in culture, go to places that maybe are off the beaten path. COVID happens, like have to pivot. And
Yeah.
it's just, it was good timing probably to become a private practice coach because everyone's like, I want to leave my agency job and, here this is, but it was not my intention by any means. And so I had always wanted to do retreats, and I ended up being asked to be a speaker at a retreat in October of 2021 in Tennessee. And it was my first opportunity to do something like that where I could do coaching for a weekend, do more speaking experience, and have some of this travel experience. And I thought, wow, that was fun. Not a huge fan of Tennessee. And I think I could definitely pull this off. And I just remember going home and posting on my Facebook wall, like, if I hosted a retreat in Ireland, would anybody come?
Right.
And I don't know if I expected the response to be what it was, but it was like overwhelmingly positive with like, absolutely. Tell me the dates, tell me where, tell me how to sign up. And I was like, oh God, now I have to figure
You're like, now
this
I have
out.
to follow through.
Yeah. Which is my process, is like to do it that way. So I end up like, my friends will make fun of me, but I am a big researcher when it comes to like experiences, travel, food, everything, because I think like I get really hyper fixated. It's a special interest of mine. And it's also just, I think it's important because like, I want to have good experiences. We have such little time on this earth. So I end up finding this really small, like historic medieval Irish village in the middle of nowhere. And people in Ireland, when I go, they're like, why are you going there?
Right.
And, but I found this family run like guest house that has 6 cottages, the communal courtyard, a bar, a big outdoor area. And like, it's just beautiful. And I was like, this is it. Cause I had been searching for months, slapped it together, picked dates, got a registration and sales page up. My VA, bless her heart, hates me for this. Cause I was like, Kelsey, I sold the entire Ireland retreat out in a day. And she's like, you did it all wrong. And I have to go fix it. And I was like,
you mean you did the sales page all wrong, or what is?
Yeah, and all the links like going to the wrong places. Nothing like the payment system wasn't. It was just, but it was like I have to take like, it's excitement, and you want to channel it and harness it.
Yeah.
So Ireland is forever something that's special to me and something I do on an annual basis. But since Ireland of 2022, I have hosted Ireland twice now. New Orleans, Asheville twice, Spain I just got done with. We have Asheville coming up again, Portugal, and then next year we have Sevilla, Spain, Hania, and the island of Crete in Greece, and then a entrepreneurial summit in a medieval village in Italy. So that sounds like a lot when I say that out loud, and it is. But it's just something like, I know you and I talked about this when we met a couple weeks ago. I don't think I ever foresaw myself graduating from grad school, going into private practice, and sitting here having this conversation. This was not a thing.
Right.
So sometimes as entrepreneurs, we create what we want and what we need. And travel and connection is definitely that for me.
So tell us the range of topics. So, we're talking about like 7 or 8 retreats. Are they all on the same topic, or do you have kind of a range or a niche, or you know what I'm asking?
Yeah, that's a good question. I noticed like this year we sold out all these options without really having a theme. And I was like, we probably need to niche down because everyone is now trying to launch a retreat. And we
Right.
can't just say like, come to these places and we're going to figure out the topics as we go.
Right.
People are paying a lot of money for this stuff. So my motto has been, and a lot of the stuff I do is around imposter syndrome, self-doubt, perfectionism, and work and just taking risks. And I started coining the phrase, doubt yourself, do it anyway.
Yeah.
And all of the retreat themes are kind of interwoven with the mindset blocks of being an entrepreneur and a small business owner. And definitely learning skill sets. Like in Portugal, it's a marketing retreat. So we're doing all the topics are marketing related.
Right.
Greece is going to be a leadership retreat for those who own group practices.
Right.
And then Sevilla is more of a get shit done situation where we're like, this is coaching intensive. We're going to get a lot launched and created in the moment, a lot of small breakout groups and sessions. And and then we have the one where we help you build retreats as well.
Right.
And it's always going to be with the theme that I believe to be true and powerful, which is like traveling and stepping out of your comfort zone leads to growth. And regardless of whatever the overarching theme or topic is, that is always going to be the foundation because I just believe in that in my soul. And like that for me is the catalyst.
And are the majority of your participants therapists?
Yeah, most of them are therapists, but at least some of them have just been entrepreneurs who are small business owners.
Right.
The one thing I like to do is keep them small and intimate, almost like incubators.
Right.
So people always ask like, can my partner come? Can they participate? And at first I was like, I don't really want that. I think that seems like an annoying added layer. But we decided in Ireland, like if you're going to travel to Europe, you probably want to bring your partner.
Right.
Okay. Well, then let's have the partners participate in the actual events. And what ended up happening is like partners will come to the speaker sessions and the coaching sessions and obviously the other stuff too. But what they'll see is a completely different lens and perspective of what their partner is doing on a day-to-day.
Right.
And they'll throw in ideas or suggestions or like people will start saying like, oh, I'm a marketing professional or I'm a web developer or a videographer. I can help you do this, this, and this. And I've never thought about your business in this way. And it's really cool to watch that come together. So that's been a really awesome experience too.
That's cool. And something I never would have thought about running a retreat is whether to consider. But you're right. If you're traveling to Europe and you're spending the money, you might want to be able to bring your significant other.
Yeah.
I feel like the other question that I get from people about retreats is, how do I not break even? Like, are you profitable? Which I know is obviously like kind of a personal question to lead with. Like, Patrick, are you profitable? But, we run businesses. You're obviously going on 8 retreats a year or something, or I don't know exactly how many, but it's a lot. So once you look at this whole thing and you're running this retreat-based business, do you feel like you're earning the income you want to be earning?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm always happy to be really transparent about money stuff because our events that we host are high ticket items. I mean,
Right.
We're talking like $4,000 to $6,500 per person, depending on if you're bringing a guest, if it's a private room, et
Right.
cetera, and
Right.
location. So yeah, we're profitable. And I could throw out numbers out there, which I don't know if they're necessarily that helpful.
Yeah.
But ultimately, all I would say is that there is so much work that goes on, not only in the planning stages and the buildup and the marketing and the building the itineraries and securing the vendors. When you're there, you don't stop. Like
You're not
all of
retreating.
my guests,
You're
no, you're not retreating. This is my like group practice staff will be like, oh, Patrick's going to another European country. I'm like, no, this is not
This is work. Yeah.
pleasurable travel. For my guests, they would say they don't see me stop moving the entire 5 days. Because like you're talking to the vendors, you're talking to the venue hostesses,
Right.
the caterers, like it's like hosting a wedding for
Right.
5 days.
Right.
And I care so much about the user experience. Like I want to make sure if you spent X amount of money that everything is taken care of and that you have an absolute transformative time.
Right.
But that does mean there is a ton of work. So
Right.
definitely profitable. hard to quantify it, though, when you think about like how many hours that you really put into that event for this to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's one of those things, like with all of the businesses that we run or that people we know run, when you run an online business and a podcast and a retreat, it's like you're putting so much into your ecosystem. It's not like I did 10 hours of work for this amount of money,
Right.
And you obviously have to do it because you love doing it. And so what would you say, we were talking off camera about just the concept that like a lot of therapists run retreats and then, I know I get emails from friends and whatever being like, my retreat is this weekend and I haven't sold out. What do I do? So what would you say are a few things that you see therapists doing wrong in terms of their retreats?
Such a good question. The number one thing is just not having an audience established.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be an audience like your size. I know you have a pretty substantial IG following.
Yeah.
I have a really solid Facebook following. Like, it doesn't have to be that large.
Right.
But you have to have someone to market to.
Right.
And the thing that I see so often, and this even happens in the retreat builders like blueprint that we do, which is like how to host a successful event. I hate that name, by the way. I need to figure out a different name. Is that sometimes that someone is not going to be able to do this successfully, and it's not because they don't have good ideas. Just like when you're launching a therapy practice, you're like, this person could be the best clinician in the world, but they cannot handle the social media side or the admin side or the business side. It's the same. And I have had people tell me, I want to host this event for this population. It's a great idea, great location, whatever, but I don't have anyone to market to. And I refuse, or I really don't want to do social media marketing. And I almost want to say immediately, like, I don't think this is a good idea.
Yeah.
Or I think that you should find someone to partner with.
Yeah.
And that's mistake number one that I see. That's the biggest one, because it can be so demoralizing to put so much of yourself into something to have it flop. And
and especially because they're putting in upfront cost. I mean, they're reserving venues.
Exactly.
And,
vendor costs, catering, like all the things. And you might be looking for speakers. So it can be very demoralizing. And I've had people try and fail, and I know how painful it was for them to do that. And I do think that's number one. Like, if you don't have an audience to market to, that's a really big challenge.
Right.
Number two is it's absolutely okay to rely on like your speakers' audience sizes and try to leverage that too. But relying solely on that is not a strategy.
Yeah.
Nobody is ever going to market your event harder than you are.
This is such a good, I'm so glad you brought this up. I have 100 thoughts on this, but yes, I could not agree more.
Let's diverge. I'm happy to go down that road. Like, it's the same like podcast stuff, right? Like, you'll have guests on. It's a great conversation. You might even be good friends with them. And when it comes time to promote it, they just share your reel and they're like, all right, cool. But because it's not as impactful to them as it is for you.
Right.
And that goes with the same thing about hosting an event is like, I see a lot of people kind of like latch on to people with bigger names. Maybe they're doing individual coaching with them and are like, this person's going to help me like get the word out.
Right.
And maybe they try, but that cannot be like the end all be all, because you have to you really have to share and showcase and highlight the experiences that people are signing up and paying for to have.
Right.
And similarly to building a private practice, another thing is just not knowing your customer avatar or niche.
Yes.
Like, if you don't know who you're marketing to, you could have the best event going on in the world, but like, you really have to understand who is going to benefit from coming to your event and why.
Yes. Gosh, all three of these, I feel like we could have a very in-depth conversation
on this stuff.
So let's start with number one. Let's get into number one. We're going to do them all three. So on number one, in terms of having an audience. So let me ask you this. One question I get a lot is, do I have to have a social media audience, or is there another way? I'm interested.
I almost want to say you have to have a social media audience, because the power of here's why. This is a very complicated answer, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but you really do need to highlight and showcase the experience. So like scouting the event, going and highlighting, posting videos, posting photos, a photo with the vendors, with the tour guide, like any videos of the area. You really are trying to sell this experience for someone, to say like, hey, this is going to be you. Like you're going to be doing all of these things. So I always recommend going to your location prior to trying to launch and sell. And that may not always be possible, but it would make a humongous difference. And when you're on social media, if you sign up for my event, you can then tag me and post like, I'm going to Italy in 2024. Right. Like, and it creates momentum, it creates excitement, and it creates FOMO. Like you really do need to use the power of the fear of missing out on an event. Last year get my years mixed up, but during Ireland 2022, we were posting a ton of videos and pictures during the experience. And I asked the guests, like, please post if you're having a good time. And what happened was like, before I even got home and launched the sales page for 23, it was sold out because people are like, I don't want to miss out. And so that is so important. And that can't happen if you're not promoting yourself on social media. So like, you can certainly build a newsletter audience and following without social media, but it is definitely a lot harder. And I almost want to think about like, I don't know your thoughts, but where else would you market these events if you don't have a social media following? And I think maybe you're like, then again, relying on colleagues to get the word out for you, but that just really doesn't work well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you would. I agree with you. So I get this question, and when I'm talking about private practice marketing, I do tell people I think it's completely possible to build a private practice without social media. But when we're talking about events, the only scenario in which I could see someone doing it without social media is if it was like a hyper local thing. Like we had like one time I lived in LA. This was actually prior to Instagram, so I don't even know if this would work now. We did like a 1-day retreat for moms and daughters, and it was like the majority of the clients were my clients and colleagues' clients, and we had 8 spots and we filled it, right? But like that's like very local. That's totally different than what we're talking about. A very low ticket item. Like maybe, a few $100 or whatever.
Yeah, I think you're like thinking about like, do you put yourself on like Eventbrite? Do you put yourself on like, I don't know, you really have to get really creative then. Like, are you going to maybe secure some podcast sponsorship? Are you going to like, I think there are ways to do it, but I do think it would be a hell of a lot harder to do if you're not, just utilizing the power of social media marketing.
Yeah. And I mean, even just like the thought that came to my head was like Google ads maybe. But, it's funny. Like I see people do this all the time where they don't want to be in front of the camera for what, they're shy or whatever, or they're introverted. And they end up spending so much money on ads, and then they're not in front of the camera and it doesn't sell anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like you could spend thousands of dollars on ads, but if you're not, it's kind of the same. Like, okay, maybe you're willing to, spend $10,000 on Google, but like, then that's getting eaten out of your profits. I don't know. I don't know if it's possible.
Maybe also have to think about like Google ads for therapy practices are great, right? Because people are legitimately going into Google and Google searching like therapist for depression, therapist near me. But how many people are going into Google saying like retreats near me, destination retreats? I don't know. And again, I think your money's better served on social media marketing, on like Facebook, Instagram ads, stuff like that. But yeah, I never want to use blanket statements in this stuff because there are definitely people who can do it in different ways. But I do think that if you do not have an audience to market to, it is going to be tough sledding for sure.
I agree. And like, maybe someone will prove us wrong, but I agree with you. I don't know that I would try to launch a retreat-based business without it. I wouldn't invest in a retreat-based business that wasn't willing to post on social media. So
no, and it's the same thing we talk about in social media marketing, right? Like, and I use the restaurant example constantly. It's the same thing. Like, I want to see their Facebook, I want to see their Instagram, I want to see if they have specials, like, are their hours updated? And it's just a glimpse into what's happening and quick connections. So I do think it's important.
Me too.
Hey, therapists. Are you listening to this show and thinking, I really want to launch my own private practice, but I have no idea where to start? Make sure to check out Kelley's Private Practice Roadmap course. In the course, Kelley gives you the exact steps you need to open your own thriving practice. You can find the link below in the show notes.
All right, let's go to number 2. So number 2 that you said, a mistake you see people make is relying on their speakers or other people's audiences. So,
Yep.
I mean, preach. I agree completely.
I'm trying to decide how hard I want to go in on this
I want to
point.
go because I'm pissed about some things on this one.
So early on in my career with practice building, I felt like, and I think a lot of us do this, like we were like, I haven't made it yet.
Yeah.
I can't sell stuff on my own. I have to rely on like my coach or other relationships or colleagues or affiliates or whatever the case may be.
Right.
And I'm definitely guilty of that. Like up until I launched Asheville last year, and I did all the marketing and sold that thing out, but I grinded for that fucking retreat.
Right.
Sorry, I shouldn't say.
You can say whatever you want. This is a cussing podcast.
Okay, cool. I always ask, and then some people look at me and they're like, no. And if you do that, we would not like to have you back.
Podcast land. Like, how many kids are listening to a business podcast about therapy? Come on.
I just want to say, my brain's going to diverge real quick, and I'll get back to this point that I did like a training a couple months ago from someone who reached out to me. And I assume if you've reached out and you're going to pay me that you know my style and you've paid attention to me. And I got on there, for prep, and I was like, hey, so I curse a lot and that's kind of my vibe and that's just who I am. And they looked at me and was like, if you do that, we will not have you back. And that is not going to be okay with us. And I was like, but you said you had 1,500 signups and most of those were my people. Like they know who I am. Anyway, okay, so back to the point. I did that. And I've been guilty of this myself, of feeling like I have to rely on other people to really get my name out there, to sell my stuff. Like my stuff wasn't good enough. And, I've done this where I've hired people to participate in events and they just didn't follow through. Like they didn't market, they didn't share, they didn't do any of the heavy lifting. And it's very frustrating and you can get really resentful. And that can impact your event because you don't want to be in your event feeling resentful or irritated or frustrated because someone didn't market or someone didn't offer to do whatever the contract said they were going to do. And I think that can really be painful to experience in a lot of ways. But I really see this happen a lot where people are like, I hired this big name and we signed this contract and they didn't do anything. They just showed up, talked for an hour. I gave them a $10,000 check and that was it. And it's like, there's nothing more painful than that because you could hire 5 coaches and who are really like eager and like newer to the field or just really bought into the vision. Who are going to work their asses off during that event and really support you. Right. And I think this could be a whole conversation in itself, but it's a painful experience. And it was actually like, last year for me was really good because I made some of these mistakes. Right. And I was frustrated and I processed it with friends and my therapist and colleagues. And ultimately it was my fault for feeling like I need to rely on someone else's reputation to sell my stuff. And once I did it, like sold out Ireland, sold out Asheville.
Interesting.
It's kind of like, okay, I can do this. Like, why am I always in this mindset of like your name isn't big enough or don't have a big enough or solid enough reputation to have these things go well. So we all have to learn that stuff the hard way sometimes. And all I would caution your listeners to do is like, if you are going to have speakers, if you are going to have coaches at your events, really get clear on your contracts, really be clear on your communication. If you feel like there are any red flags, address them. Don't let them linger.
Put it in writing.
Writing. Everything should be signed. Everything should be agreed upon. Have a 30-minute Zoom call prior to signing that contract and be on the same page.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest and say like, if I was in your situation and I had signed a contract and somebody didn't post when they needed to post or whatever, I would be resentful too. So I guess I don't mean that, because I think like, I know nowadays, like when I get hired to do events, there's a contract. It's like, you're going to do X number of reels. You're going to send X number of, do Instagram stories. You're going to send to your email list, whatever. And those contracts are so, so important because I think it gives the guest, or not the guest, but the other vendor or the other speaker a sense of your level of commitment to your own business and like your expectations, and everyone's really clear on them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The thing that I notice, and I notice this happens at therapy retreats a lot, is people will ask people to be speakers at their retreats, knowing that that person has a big following. And then there's this expectation, one, that person doesn't get paid, which is crazy to me. And two, that then they also promote it to their following. And
see,
that's crazy.
That's very frustrating as well.
Yeah.
And I've been on that side of things too, where I've been asked to be keynote speakers at summits. And I asked, well, what's the pay?
Right.
And the response was, oh, you just get to come to the summit. And I'm like, but I wasn't going to come to the summit anyway. So why is that? I got to get my airfare, like my hotel, step away from work. Something's not adding up. So that's a great point of the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
And if you are listening and you're launching a retreat business, I will always cut into my profit to ensure that my speakers are taken care of. And that means accommodations, meals, excursions, pay, transportation, and also airfare stipends when I can swing that, because it's a lot to ask somebody to just travel across the country or the world and put their life on hold for free.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's something that people don't always consider. I think, in our businesses, there's this idea that like exposure is the payment. And, to a certain extent, like there are times when I will be a guest on something completely for the exposure, because it really is offering me exposure. But what I find is the companies that are offering you exposure are also paying you. And the companies that are saying, we're offering you exposure, and then I look at their email list or I look at their Instagram and they have like 600 followers. And I'm like, this isn't exposure. This is just what you're telling me,
Sure.
And I think it's, I even had a request this morning. It's probably why I'm pissed about it, from somebody who asked me to be a speaker at their event for free, asked me to send it out to my email list for free. And then my team sent an email back being like, we don't do free events unless like we're giving back and doing it for a nonprofit or something, in which case we do. But the person said, well, okay, I will consider a payment. And I was like, well, we're out, but it's just interesting. I think that people assume that people will want to promote their events for free. And I think that's
it's shitty. And I think it is a slippery slope. And I'm glad that you named that, because that does happen constantly. And that's another thing I did to myself last year, was speak at conferences and events for free.
Yeah.
And I told myself 2022 is the last time I will ever do this, because I have way too much to offer. You have way too many offers going on, and your time is valuable and limited. So I get it. When you're starting out and you want to try something, money is tight, but you do have to budget accordingly to make attractive offers for speakers and breakout coaches and people who are going to be involved, because, again, people are putting their lives on hold to be a part of these things. And I don't take that for granted.
Yeah. And I think like you said, you could hire a big name and they might not necessarily have the investment. Not saying like people have to hire some big name and pay them tons of money. But I think having that clarity that you're talking about with having contracts in place, making sure you've had those conversations, even if, you have an event and you're not paying top dollar, there are so many wonderful therapists out there or coaches out there who can speak to different topics that might not have a huge audience, but might be more valuable to your retreat than the big name, Oh,
absolutely. And that's one thing I've tried to do for 2024 events, is when we've been selecting speakers, to pull from a close group of colleagues and friends always, but to also pull from people who have come to multiple events of mine over the last couple of years, because it feels hypocritical to say, keep paying to come to these events, learn all these things. You're killing it. You're creating all this cool stuff in the world, and I want to give them opportunities. So that's been cool too, to say
Oh my
like,
God, I
here's a
love
way to
that.
give back in that. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
love that, because also that speaks to your own methods, of like you're empowering them, and like what the student becomes the coach or whatever. What's that? There's something.
Yeah,
I swear.
becomes a teacher.
Yeah. What
Yeah,
is that?
coach, whatever, same thing.
Yeah. Whatever.
So yeah, I mean, it's been cool for me, and I think that feels good all across the board
Yeah.
because it's like, okay, here is exposure, here is payment, here is appreciation for coming to multiple events and like investing a significant amount of money. And the other thing that we didn't talk about, and we don't need to get into this right now because I know we'll get to point 3, but like once you start hosting successful events, people are going to come out of the woodwork to ask you to speak at your events, and a lot of them are going to get very frustrated with you when you tell them, I've already selected speakers.
Right.
We already have ideas of people we're asking, like we have a process. And
Right.
I'm amazed by it, but people really get upset. And it's never, I don't think I should be amazed or astonished anymore, but sometimes it's just like mind blowing to me.
I know. I think that's the thing with any business. You have things where I have friends who have businesses that are completely not related to therapists that will ask me to post. And I'm like, I don't know that I'm going to be able to sell like your frying pan, but,
Right.
but I love you and I'll buy one. And,
Sure.
love your frying pan, but I'm not sure that all the therapists that I promote to want to buy it. Okay, let's get to point 3. And of course, I'm going to forget point 3 because that's how my brain works. What is it? Do you remember? We talked about audience.
I think I said it was about having a niche or a target audience. And it goes without saying, just like we talked about for private practice ownership or any business, you have to know who you're marketing to. And what I see often is like, come to Bali and like just relax and rejuvenate and restore on the beach. And like, that's cool. But I kind of want to know that if I'm going to spend X amount of money, what are you going to help me with? Is this an entrepreneurial retreat?
Right.
Is this a clinical based retreat? Is this a client facing retreat?
Right.
Like we really have to, is this a self-care retreat? Like,
right.
I have a friend who just launched a therapist who tarot retreat, very niche, very specific to like, hey, you're going to come, we're going to tarot, we're going to teach you how, we're going to go through the deeper meaning. Like we're going to have food together and travel. Awesome. That's great. That's a great concept. It's a little challenging to sell a big ticket event if you're just saying like, come travel with me, essentially. I just don't think that is going to work on a sales page. It's not going to get someone's attention. So I really do encourage all of you to think about who your target audience is. And these events can change. Like you don't have to be pigeonholed into one thing. But I do think it is important to think about like, what is the client, who is the client avatar for sure? And like, really, what is the theme going on here besides just come on this event, go give me some money and that's that.
I couldn't agree more. I have nothing to add because I couldn't agree more. I mean, in all areas of business, and I see those things too. Come to Bali. It's always Bali, right? Although I want to go.
It is always,
I
want to go to Bali too,
yeah.
But like.
But it's always Bali, and it's always like a little bit of yoga, a chef, and some like deep learning. Or
I was just going to say, it's going to be yoga on the beach.
Yeah. And I'm down for yoga on the beach, but also like, I don't know that I need to pay a host to take me to yoga on the beach. Like I could pay a Balinese retreat company to do, yoga.
For sure.
Or just a hotel.
Build the value. And it's all going to be about experiences. Like,
yeah,
I try to think about what will people remember for the rest of their lives? And how can we seek out things that help align with getting out of our comfort zones, whether it be through food, through tours that are just different, through experiences. All of those things are so important. And it just goes the extra mile when you're really putting intentionality behind your itinerary and your vendor sources and who you select and the intentionality behind what you're doing.
Oh, I could not agree more. I mean, do you, Patrick, and I have some off the top of my head, but do you know any clinicians who are running clinical retreats that you think are doing this really well?
Yeah, I think so. I do know people who are doing like trauma intensive retreats. I do know people who are doing EMDR and intensive retreats to work through like mindset barriers and blockages and trauma responses. I know people who do couples retreats. I think that gets challenging, but it's exciting if you can pull it off.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, like, I had a coaching client who was doing one, and we were coming up with these creative ways to network and get the word out. And it was like wedding planners and like all sorts of people who are coming into contact with couples all the time. But I will be very honest. The clinical side of retreat building is not my wheelhouse. It really is like the entrepreneurial therapist stuff. And I always hate to give like bad advice on the clinical side about like HIPAA compliance and protection and licensure stuff. So
we can let other people do that. I'll say one example. I went on a clinical retreat with on-site workshops. Are you familiar with them? They're in Nashville. They are a clinical-based retreat program where they are in one state. So they're not going, well, I guess I should say maybe they're in more than one state. I don't know. But the reason I bring this up is, and I can link this in the show notes, I think they do a really good job of marketing their clinical retreats. As somebody who's been on one, I went to like a week-long codependency workshop that they did, which was fantastic. But as somebody who is in the business of therapy and who likes the business of therapy, their marketing is incredible. Like, I look at their marketing and I'm like, who did you pay to help you do this? Because I need to hire them. So if you're a therapist and you're looking for an example of some good marketing, I'll link it in the show notes. Because I think they do their video footage, their social media footage is really great.
I like on-site is what it's called.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. It was a great retreat too. For me, you're not allowed to have your phone for a week. That's
awesome.
And at the time when I went, I had 3 phones. I'm not gonna lie. So I had like one for the business I was working for, one for my business, and one for my own life. And I walked in the door, and you have to give them your phones for the week, and they don't like steal them or anything. They just put them away. And the clinical director goes, yeah, I think you need to be here. Just these 3 phones alone, But I think they do really incredible clinical marketing. So that's the reason I bring it up. And I think it's good to look at, for clinicians, if you're interested in running a retreat, look at who else is running those retreats, and look at what they're doing successfully and look at their marketing. Because, I think so often, and I'm so guilty of this, of like thinking that my idea is so unique and that no one's ever done a mother-daughter teen retreat in Malibu or whatever. And it's like, well, there's a lot of those, and how is mine going to be different? And how am I? It doesn't mean not to do it, but it's like, you want to know what the landscape is of other people marketing in your space. I think that goes for anybody.
For sure.
But
yeah, I think that's great market research, to say, hey, this is something I really like. Hey, this is something that doesn't stand out to me.
Right.
It's good comparison and data gathering too. So I think that's a great suggestion.
So Patrick, here's what I want to know. In the time when this podcast is going, we know, what I know about you is that your retreats sell out in like hours, days. And so I don't want to have to say to people like, promote this retreat, because by the time we launch, it's going to be sold out. So where can people find what retreats are available to them that you do?
Yep, it's a great question. It's a good problem to have.
It's a great problem to have.
You can go to my website, allthingspractice.com, and whatever's on there will say whether or not it's available or not, or coming soon. And also you can follow the All Things Private Practice podcast. We always are promoting stuff that's upcoming and talking about future opportunities.
Awesome. And that'll all be in the show notes. And then, we'll also put clips online or on Instagram and everything of all of this so people can find it. But I think that's the best way to go. And I'll say to anyone who's listening, if you want to go on one of Patrick's retreats, sign up. Like, don't wait, click the sign up button, because I know how that goes. So anyway.
I had someone message me last night and said, hey, I see that there's one opportunity to come to Sevilla in 2024, but I can't sign up until tomorrow. Can you just take me offline? And I was like, yes, I will take it offline for you. But it's kind of wild to have gotten to a place where that is the case.
It's a good thing. And I mean, I think even just the fact that you have people coming back on multiple retreats speaks to the quality of people's experience. So it's really cool. And Thank you so much, Patrick, for being here. And everyone should check out your podcast. We did an episode for your podcast a few weeks ago, which was really fun. And I'm looking forward to more collaboration. It'll be great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on.
Ask Kelley Anything is just around the corner. But first, a word from our sponsor. Stay tuned for Kelley's response to your private practice questions.
Therapists, do you want more clients at your full cash rate? Mentaya is a platform that navigates out-of-network benefits for clients. They get clients on average 70% back on therapy by filing claims and chasing down insurance companies. They handle literally everything so that you can focus on what matters. Click the link in the show notes to learn more and get 1 month free using the code PRO. On today's Ask Kelley Anything, we're going to be answering an interesting question about niches and days of the week and scheduling. So without further ado, I'm going to play you today's voicemail.
Hello, my name is Sakai. Thank you so much for this opportunity to ask a question. I saw one of your posts recently about pitching your therapy niche. And in that example that you provided, you included something about the practitioner only being able to work a certain day of the week. And that was included with a whole other list of things that you shouldn't do, like too many approaches or working with everybody. And I was wondering why that particular piece about working 1 day a week, your availability, what your thoughts are around that as something not to do. The reason why I'm wondering about that is because I am thinking about reducing my hours of my full-time job to be able to work 1 day a week for now in my private practice, and wondering what's the best way to message that or communicate that to potential clients or other providers as I market. So thank you so much. I am looking forward to your answer and not so much hearing my voice. Thank you again for all that you do. Bye-bye.
All right. This is a really great question. That kind of cracked me up. So you're right. I posted a post a while ago that talked about marketing your private practice and your niche and being careful not to say that you only work 1 day a week. Now, I want to backtrack on that a little bit because here's the reality. If you only have the time in your schedule to work 1 day a week in your private practice, then do it. Absolutely do it. And you can fill just 1 day a week at a time. The reason that I often recommend that people don't just come out and say, I only work 1 day a week, is because it doesn't give referral sources and clients a lot of access to you. So typically what I recommend is if you have the option of 2 half days a week, that I would start there. Because then you can say, I offer private practice slots on Tuesday and Thursday. And even if, let's say, Tuesday gets full, you can say, I offer private practice slots on Tuesday and Thursday. Only Thursday is open at this time, but I can let you know if something on Tuesday opens up. It just provides a lot more flexibility. You know, I often find that when clinicians have very limited availability, just the reality of it is that it's harder for them to get clients because not everyone is going to be able to come on that 1 day of the week. So I always prefer 2 smaller chunks of time, or even like 1 evening appointment on Tuesdays, 1 evening appointment on Thursdays, and a full evening appointment or full day of appointments on Saturdays. But I just really suggest trying to give clients more than 1 day a week they can choose from. If that is totally impossible, that is not a reason not to do private practice. I just think it's ideal to be able to give people a little bit more wiggle room. I hope this helps. I'm super excited to hear about your private practice, and I'll talk to you next time. If you would like to be featured on Ask Kelley Anything, I love getting listener questions from you guys. Anything about private practice goes. And the best way to do that is actually just to give me a call and leave me a question on my voicemail. So I'm going to tell you the phone number right now and make sure to write it down. Here it is, 805-243-8241. I'm looking forward to hearing from you.